few moments. Good morning, everyone. We are in Perek Yudchet, chapter 18 of Sefer Melachim Aleph, and we're going to be learning today one of the most famous stories in Sefer Melachim, and probably in all of Tanakh, the story of Eliyahu Hanavi on Har HaKarmel, on Mount Carmel, his challenge against the Nevi'ei HaBaal, the prophets of the Baal, and what would seem to be an interesting transformation in Achav, in the evil king Achav. And it starts where we had left off. This is, as you recall, the third of what will be 4 scenes with Eliyahu Hanavi, of significant scenes with Eliyahu Hanavi. There was a famine that had been decreed in the past. That famine has been going on, and so the Navi begins, Vayhi Yamim Rabim. It has been going on for a period of time, as we'll see in just a moment. For 3 years it has been happening. And as the Radak points out, that over the course of this period of the famine, people began to do tshuva. They began to realize there is consequence to their actions, and so they began to do tshuva. However, at the very same time, Udvar Hashem haya el Eliyahu, and Hashem spoke to Eliyahu b'shana shlishit lemor, in the 3rd year, saying, Lech hera'el Achav, go and appear before Achav, v'etneh matar al pnei adama, and I will give rain onto the earth. The question is, why does he have to appear to Achav? If God is going to give rain, let him just give rain. The people are suffering. Why is he not receiving the rain? So the Mitzudot David says very simply, because it was promised, Eliyahu himself had promised, that rain would not appear ki'im lefi dvari, unless if I say so. And therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu was telling him, okay, now is the time for you to say so. The Abarbanel goes a step further. That the Abarbanel says that all that you have gone through and the period of hiding, you've been in hiding for 3 years, first on the other side of the Jordan, and then he was hiding with the woman in the Tzarfata. And all of this time, what I need you to do now is I'm going to give you some kavod. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to take care of you, make sure your kavod is preserved. The Alshich, however, has a fascinating piece on this. Because what the Alshich says is, no, you need this rain to be announced, because if it wasn't announced, Achav can choose to misinterpret it, unaware of the fact, or fully aware of the fact. In other words, Achav could go in and say, hey, people, you see, Eliyahu said he wasn't going to bring rain. He had no control over this. Or, hey, people, you see, Eliyahu said he was going to bring rain. I took care of it. It's raining now. So Eliyahu needs to be the one to make sure there's no question whatsoever that it is the conclusion of that very same curse he had given from God 3 years earlier. Vayelech Eliyahu le'ra'ot el Achav v'hara'av chazak b'Shomron. Eliyahu goes, the famine is severe in Shomron. And Shomron specifically, it was just in the north, it wasn't in the south, it wasn't anywhere else, it was just in the north. That's the point of saying Shomron, because we don't hear anything about Yehudah suffering from anything. Vayikra Achav el Ovadiyahu asher ala bayit. And Achav, in the meantime, calls out to Ovadiyahu. Now, Ovadiyahu is a name that is pretty common in those days. The Dat Mikra says, listen, we need to understand that this could be simply the name of his servant. However, the Medrash Tanchuma and the Gemara in Sanhedrin and Daf Lamed Tet Amud Bet both say, no. This is the Ovadiyahu. The Ovadiyahu who is one of the Trei Asar, and he was working in Achav's court. Now the question is, Achav and Izebel worship idols. Why would they bring a person, as the Navi now says, V'Ovadiyahu haya yarei et Hashem ma'od. He was in great awe of God. Now, Yarei et Hashem ma'od is an exclusive term to Ovadiyahu. We have a Yarei Elokim, but we don't have Yarei et Hashem ma'od, very much in awe of God. And so the question is, why would this be a person in Achav's court? So there is a medrash, and this goes back to this medrash in Sanhedrin, and the medrash talks about the fact that Achav knew that Ovadiyahu was the person, a God-fearing person, and he specifically chose a God-fearing person to be in his court. Why? He was looking at previous examples in Jewish history. So, for example, Potiphar had Yosef, Lavan had Yaakov. In both of those cases, when there were these fiercely devout religious people in their homes, they were blessed. There was blessing that was brought forth. Lavan was wicked, and nevertheless, his assets grew tremendously. Potiphar was not a great tzaddik either, but by the mere fact that he had Yosef there, Egypt flourished. And so Achav is looking at past history and says, I may not be the most righteous of kings, let's put it euphemistically, but I know that if I have a person like Ovadia in my court and I take care of Ovadia, then God will take care of things. Now, at this point, we enter into a Ma'amar Muskar. The meaning of a Ma'amar Muskar is obviously a parenthetical statement that is made by the Tanakh, and it says one more piece of information that we need to understand, and that piece of information is Vayihi b'hachrit Izevel et nevi'eh Hashem. Let me tell you how great Ovadia was. When Izevel was killing the prophets of God. Now notice specifically, it's Izevel and it's not Achav. We'll see in a moment that Achav was one of these people who was trying to play both sides of the fence. He wasn't the evil Izevel, but he wasn't the tzaddik of Ovadia. He was somewhere in the middle, like the case was with the majority of the Jewish people in the north, people who were literally treading on both sides of the threshold, as we will see shortly. But Izevel killed prophets. Ovadia took 100 prophets, and he went ahead and he hid them in 2 caves, 50 and 50, lechem v'mayim, and he provided for them food so they'd be able to survive. So if you want to know what Ovadia was like, Ovadia wasn't just a simple person who davened and said Tehillim all day. Ovadia was the person who risked his life and betrayed the queen by working against her and protecting people she was trying to find and kill. Vayomer Achav el Ovadiah. So Achav now turns to Ovadiah and he says, Lech ba'aretz el kol ma'yanei hamayim vel kol nachalim. Go and seek out water. There's a drought. There's been no rain. I want you to check everywhere, any well or any river. Ulai nimtza chatzir v'nechayeh sus v'afered. Maybe we're going to be successful and we'll find some growth, something to graze on, some vegetation, and the horses and the mules will be able to live, velo nachrit mebehema, and we won't be without any kind of animals, of livestock. Remember, think about this comparison though. The previous pasuk is telling us that what Izevel did was she's killing prophets. What is Achav worried about? His horses and his mules. That's what he's saying. But he says, let's go find the water at all. The water to see if anything is available, not the water per se, but if there's vegetation because of that water. Vayechalku lahem et haaretz la'avor ba. And Achav and Ovadia divided up the land. Now, they went ahead. Achav halach b'derech echad levado. V'Ovadiah halach b'derech echad levado. So obviously, there were people who could have escorted the king. And there were people who could have escorted what probably was one of his most important ministers. But they went alone. And the Navi is saying, hey, why would they go alone? So there's a number of different theories. The Klei Yakar says they're going alone. This is actually retribution. Okay, in a sense that they don't have anyone with them. Their power, his power, Achab's power, is waning to such an extent that no one's going to go on this mission. Whereas the Dat Mikra says, actually, no, this was a secret mission. In other words, the last thing the king wants to do is to take a whole delegation and start searching for water, which is, at that point, some kind of statement of defeat. I am so thirsty, I have to send people out to try to find water, as opposed to I'm taking care of it. I don't care about what Eliyahu has threatened us in this drought that's all around us. It's all possible. Okay. Actually the Klei Yakar offers one more idea, by the way. If the horses and the mules are don't have anything to eat, why would you want to send out a big mass army to go ahead and look for things? You're wasting resources at the same time. Vayehi Ovadyahu baderech, and there are Ovadjas along the road. Vehine Eliyahu likrato, and suddenly Eliyahu appears. The hine is a word of suddenness. Vayakireu vayipol al panav, and Ovadja recognizes him immediately, and he falls on his face. Vayomer ataze adoni Eliyahu, are you my master, Eliyahu? Now, in the ancient world, recognizing someone means that you have had experience with him. Eliyahu was famous, but Eliyahu's been in hiding for 3 years. So it's every right to say that there's still a doubt in Ovadja's mind about whether or not this is really Eliyahu, but he does refer to him with this sense of respect, calling him Adoni. Vayomer lo ani, and Ovadja says, and Achab says, yeah, that's me. Lech emor ladonecha hine Eliyahu. Go tell your master that Eliyahu has appeared. Interestingly, if you notice, and we'll see this a number of times in these psukim, the title of Adon is going to be used. But look at how it starts. Ovadja first tells Eliyahu, you're my master. Eliyahu says, go tell your master Achab. In a sense, he's saying, I'm not your master. Achab's your master. He's hitting him back. He also doesn't say at the very same time, our master, okay, because Achab obviously is not somebody Eliyahu is going to be listening to or looking up to as a master. Yeah, Lita.
Was there something in when Eliyahu was saying this that maybe Ovadja shouldn't have been working for Achab?
Well, listen, if you think about it, Eliyahu knows, because even though Ovadja will tell him, Eliyahu knows that as much as Ovadja is working for Achab, he's doing the right thing. He's protecting people. So he's not going to be criticized for that. But Eliyahu does criticize him by saying, don't call me master. I know who your master is. There is a shtoch there. So I think what you're saying has basis within the text as well. Vayomer mechatati ki ata notenet avdecha biyad Achab lamiteni. So interestingly, Ovadja's response to seeing him is, wait a second. Why are you setting me up to be killed? What did I do wrong that you're appearing to me? Now, see, if you appear to me and I can't bring you in to Achab, ultimately Achab is going to say, you're a traitor. I've been looking for him, I've been searching for him, and he hasn't been around. So why are you doing this to me, Ovadja says. Notice, by the way, how Ovadja refers to Achab. So if I take the piece, first, Ovadja calls Eliyahu Adon, my master, Adonim. Then Eliyahu says, no, your master is Achab. And then Ovadja responds, not with Adoni Achab, and not to the king, but using the personal name of this person, just Achab. It's a way of responding to Eliyahu, saying, he's not my Adon. Chai Hashem Elokecha. Im yesh goyu mamlacha shelo shalach Adoni sham levakeshcha. Now, the master, my master, going back to that idea, he's looked for you everywhere. Every single country he's searched. V'amruayin, and everyone has said you're nowhere to be found. V'yishbia et hamamlacha v'et hagoy ki lo yimtza'aka. And he's made everyone swear that you're not able to be found. Now, there is a medrash that Achav was one of the kings who ruled over the entire world. And that's why he had the power. This is a Gemara Megillah and Yud Aleph from the Bet. That's why he had the power to search everyone. This is referring to being a melech b'kippah over the globe. Okay. Interestingly, again, we talk about the ancient world, whether or not they knew the world was flat or was round. When you say melech b'kippah, well, a kippah is a dome. It's already got that shape to it. It may be very well that Chazal understood, the shape of the world. The Radak says, ultimately, that Gemara doesn't really work, that medrash. And the reason it doesn't work is if we say Achav ruled over the whole world, well, how about the north where he lost some cities? And how about the south of Israel where he's not even the king? He really isn't the king over the whole world. But rather, according to the Radak, he had the relationships with the world that he was able to search for Eliyahu everywhere and was unsuccessful. Va'ata omer, and now says Ovadia, let me understand what you're asking me. You're saying that you now want me to say to Achav, lech emor ladonecha in Eliyahu. You want me to say to my master, here's Eliyahu. In other words, what you're doing is, Eliyahu is a person who's a wanted man. You want me to tell Achav, v'hayani elech mitach, I'm going to leave, v'ruach Hashem yisa'achal asher lo yida. And the Spirit of God, or in this case, let's call it the winds of God, will take you to a place you'll never find. Uvati lagid lachav v'lo yimtza achav v'haragani. And so I'll go to Achav, and he's going to kill me as a result of it. And I've been a fearful Jew and a Jew in awe of God all my life since I was a young man. So all of this extent the Ruach Hashem Yisrael, the question is, will it really be the case that he will really be taken away by the winds? Well, we know at the end of his life, he's taken up in the chariot. The Ralbag points out very simply, Eliyahu's life was a life where he kept on disappearing on people. And it could be, that was, as the Radak says, that's what people thought happened. When he would disappear, he was so good at disappearing, people thought that Eliyahu was taken away by God's winds. So he's saying, I am afraid. Now notice, by the way, in this statement, the Avdecha Yereyat Hashem Minu Urai, that is a Vav Hanigud. Okay, it is a Vav that shows contrast. In this kind of case, you want me to do this, you want me to tell him, don't you realize, to the counter, I don't deserve this because I've been faithful. Not, and I've been faithful. Okay, it's a nice piece of information, but I don't deserve it because I have been faithful all of these years. Says Eli, Halohu Gad ladoniyat asher asiti baharog izevel et nevi Hashem. Don't you know, says Ovadia to Eliyahu, what I have done while Izeva was killing the Nevi'im of Hashem, V'achbim Nevi'ei Hashem, 100 ish, 50 ish b'mara, v'achalkelem lechem v'mayim. Don't you know I have been taking care of this? These 100 Nevi'im, while everyone's trying to kill him, V'ata omer lech, emor ladonecha ne'eliyahu v'haragani. And you're telling me, go, just tell him, I'm going to get killed by this. So this whole idea of what's happening is fascinating because if you look at this exchange, the exchange begins Pasuk Zayin, right? And it goes until Tet Vav. It's 9 psukim long. Zayin, Chet, Tet, Yud, Yud Aleph, Yud Bet, Yud Gimel, Yud Daled. Actually, all the way up, the 9 psukim long up until Tet Vav. Vayomer Eliyahu. So Eliyahu says, Chai Hashem Tzvakot, takes an oath. Asher amadati lefanav ki hayom era'eh elav. I swear by the name of God who I have appeared before, I will appear before Achav today as well. Vayelech Ovadiyahu likrat Achav. So Ovadiyahu goes to Achav, vayaged lo, and he tells him this story. Vayelech Achav likrat Eliyahu. and Achav goes to meet up with Eliyahu. Now, it's an interesting piece. What's Achav's response to hearing that his nemesis, Eliyahu, is alive? It seems to be very passive. I'm following the instruction. Achav in this chapter is going to be a very different person than we normally imagine him. Vayehi kirot Achav et Eliyahu, and when Achav sees Eliyahu, Vayomer Achav elav, Ataza ocher Yisrael. Are you the person who is the troubler, who makes trouble in the Jewish people? Ocher Yisrael can also be the person who muddies the waters in the same sense. Are you the one who's bringing all of these people before us? The Mitzudat Zion says Ocher is destroyer of Israel. Okay. This is talking about specifically Achav, about this famine that's been for 3 years. Vayomer lo acharti et Yisrael. Eliyahu says, it's not me. Kim atau veit avicha. It's you, Achav, and your father's home. Be'azavchem et mitzvot Hashem, when you have left the commands of God, v'telech acharei baalim, and you began to worship avodah zarah. Ve'ata shalach kivot elai et kol Yisrael el har Carmel. Now says Eliyahu to Achav, I want you to gather all of the Jewish people to Har Carmel. That's the Haifa areas, Carmel. And bring along the 450 prophets of the Baal. And bring along the 400 priests of the Asherah who are supported directly by Izebel, who eat at Izebel's table. Interestingly, that group of people, the Nevi'ei Asherah, are going to disappear. And the reason they're going to disappear from this story, according to the Radak, is because they have the protection of Izebel. Achav is going to bring the Nevi'ei Baal. He's going to bring the rest of the northern tribes there to Har Carmel for the great showdown. The Nevi'ei Asherah we don't see. They have the protection. And Radak's position is that they understood something was going on. And they knew that this was going to be Eliyahu's attempt to discredit them. And instead of going there, they knew it would be safer if they could stay back. They could, because Izebel protected them. Izebel wouldn't force them to do that. Vayishlach Achav b'chol b'nei Yisrael. And Achav sent out the messages all over the northern kingdom. Vayikbotz et hanaviim el Har Carmel. And he brought the Nevi'im to Har Carmel. Notice, who didn't he bring? Now, the first group he didn't bring were the Nevi'ei Asherah, but he didn't bring somebody else. This is the opportunity to unmute yourselves and answer, or it is an opportunity for you to just look at me and I'll answer in another 5 seconds.
Kol Yisrael?
He didn't bring the Jews. So the question is, why didn't he bring the Jews? The Radak takes the approach, he didn't bring the Jews because they came on their own. He didn't have to bring them. He made the announcement and they streamed there. It could be, by the way, that Eliyahu's request was Kol Yisrael, which may not have been an hyperbole, but when you don't have all of the people coming, he wasn't successful in bringing that, or may have had to say Yisrael. The Radak's answer is more elegant, because then it doesn't say, okay, why didn't it say Yisrael at least, even if it wasn't Kol? But it's because they came, he wasn't the one who gets the credit for them appearing. Vayigash Eliyahu el kol ha'am vayomer ad matay atem poschim al shtei hasiipim. And so Eliyahu turns to the people and he chastised them. He said, how long are you going to be jumping back and forth over the threshold? Or as we say in English, how much longer are you going to sit on the fence? You have to take a stand one way or another. This word poschim, most of the Mefarshim take it as from the idea of Pesach, right? The poschim midalgim, you're kind of hopping back and forth. That's one. The Radak, however, says no. It's from the word piseach, lame. And in that term, in that context, if we say, how much longer are you going to be lame on both sides? Eliyahu is telling him not that you're jumping back and forth, you're choosing God this day and you're choosing Baal the next day. But when you choose both, in effect, you're not choosing either one. You're not complete this way, you're not complete that way. How much longer are you going to lead lives where you don't lead it fully, with a full allegiance to one side or the other? And this, by the way, Poslim al shtei hasivim is a famous phrase now that's used in Ivrit all the time. Basically, how much longer is going to be till you take a stand one way or the other? Im Hashem Elokim l'chu acharav, v'im haba l'chu acharav. Eliyahu says, listen, make a choice. You want to go with God, go with God. You want to go with Baal, go with them. V'lo anu ha'am oto davar. And the people did not respond. Rashi says they were incapable of response. But another possibility of not responding is that they feel they don't need to respond. Eliyahu meets them there, but why take a stand when you've been doing okay not taking a stand? Why take a stand now? Who are you, Eliyahu, to make this demand of us? Vayomer Eliyahu ela'am. Eliyahu now tells them, Ani notarti navi la Hashem levadi. I am the only prophet around. Now, the reality is the Kli Yakar, there are 100 prophets in hiding. So why would Eliyahu say that? So one possibility, says the Mitzudat Zion, because he thinks Achav doesn't know about this. So why is he going to say, I'm prophet number 101, and by the way, there's 100 of them hiding over in those two caves. I'm the only one. That's the simple piece. The other possibility is, Kli Yakar says that, the other 100 were what are called the B'nai Nevi'im. There is, in the time of Tanakh, and we've seen them appear before, people who are in training to be Navi. They are learning the art of getting close to God to receive Nevuah. The 100 were, in that case, the B'nai Nevi'im. Eliyahu was the one, he was the one graduate Navi. He was the one who was really a full-fledged Navi, and that's why he's saying I'm the only one.
Rabbi,
yeah.
It's interesting that it says Vayomer Eliyahu el Ha'am.
Yeah.
But they weren't there. Ha'am would refer to the people.
Well, the people came. They didn't come because Achav brought them. They came on their own. Whether it was all of the people or just representatives.
I missed that,
Yeah. By the way, it's very hard for us to imagine that everyone shows up. Okay, it's just hard to imagine. Is it possible, by the way, for an event like this? It's entirely possible. It's not, but it also is possible that these are representatives. And then he continues, he says, by the way, I'm the one prophet and there's 450 of them. Vayidnu lanu shnayim parim, give us 2 bulls. Now, 2 bulls or 2 ox, 2 bulls probably is better. Interestingly, the Malbim wants to make a distinction between Shnayim Parim and Shnei Parim. Shnayim, when he says, whenever we use the word Shnayim, it means they're totally equal. In fact, there's a medrash which says they were twin cows. They were identical twin bulls that came forward, and therefore to identify that there's no difference between one and the other. However, others say, no, that ultimately what happened here, there were 2 different kinds of bulls. There was a better one and a lesser one. And they gave those 2. They disagree with the Malbim's distinction between Shnei and Shnayim. Vayivcharu lahem apara achad, v'yanatchuhu v'yasimu alo etzim v'eish lo yasimu. Okay? He says, so according to the approach, they weren't the same. He told the Nevi Abal, you pick first. You get whichever one of these bulls you want for the purpose of a sacrifice, slaughter it, prepare the sacrifice for your altar, put it on the wood, but don't light the fire. Vaniya set the parachad, and I'll do the same thing with the other animal. And I also won't go ahead and light a fire. Ukratem b'shem Elohechem. You call out in the name of your God, v'ani akra b'shem Hashem, and I'll call out in the name of God. V'ya Elohim asher ya'aneh v'esh hu ha'Elohim. And whichever God responds, he's going to be the God. And now all of a sudden the people find the voice. And they say, oh, this is a good plan. Vayomer Eliyahu l'nevi'ah Baal. And so Eliyahu says to the prophets of the Baal, Bacharu lachem apara achad, v'asu rishona. You go first. Take care of it. Ki atem harabim. Because, there are more of you. And in this case, you take care of it. V'kiru b'shem Elohechem, and you call out to your God, v'eish lo tasimu, but don't put a fire on this altar. V'yikchu et ha'para asher natan lahem, and they take the cow. V'yasu, and they did. Vayikru b'shem haBaal, and they began calling out in the name of their idol Baal, me'aboker v'ad tzarayim, all morning long until noon. Lemor, haBaal anenu, answer us, Baal. Ve'en kol ve'en oneh, but there's no sound and there's no response. V'yifaschu ala mizbeach asher asa, and they began jumping around this mizbeach. The Targum Yonatan says, V'ishtatu alagora, that what they did is they began looking like a bunch of crazy people, the way they were dancing around. Interestingly, if you think about it for a moment, there's a word here that's really that we've seen before. They're jumping, they're dancing. How do we refer to their dancing? The same word as Vayifaschu Pesach, the same word which Eliyahu had challenged the people that you can't be jumping around on both sides of a fence. You have to take a stand, or both sides of the threshold. You have to take a stand. Well, here we see where that word jumping also has another meaning. How much longer could we be worshiping? Because that was their form of worship. Vayihi b'tzoraim, and now it's noon. Vayihatel bahem Eliyahu. And Vayatel Behem Eliyahu normally is taken as the explanation that he mocked them. The Mitzudot says, lag, it's mockery. Interestingly, if you look in other places in Tanakh, Uriel Simon, in his book on reading the biblical narrative, he says, look, for example, back in Sefer Shoftim, Vatomer Delilah el Shimshon, Hine hatalta bi. Delilah says to Shimshon, to Samson, you have, maybe not mocked, but within context, you've lied to me. That this is meaning, in other words, that what the Navi wants us to understand, Vayatel Bem Eliyahu, that Eliyahu now is not necessarily mocking him, but he's not telling him the truth. This is not something that he believes at all. This is not true. Vayomer, call out in a louder voice, because this is the God. Now, halachically, this phrase of calling out in the louder voice for your God is the basis of us having a silent Shmona Esrei, because it is considered as a form of idolatry to have to yell to God. Why? Because if I yell to God, it means he can't hear me. What do you mean God can't hear you? God can hear a whisper. God can hear your thoughts. What does it mean God can't hear you? And in fact, the silent Shmona Esrei is such that the only one who's supposed to hear you saying Shmona Esrei is you. That outside your immediate perimeter of up to Dalet Amot, no one should be able to hear a word coming from you, because this is your moment of speaking to God. And so we see from the Nevi'ah Baal and Eliyahu's comments that the way you speak to an idol is when you really want them to answer, yell. Now, by the way, before anyone says anything, that's only the Shmona Esrei. When it comes to all of the other pieces, there is a sense, especially with Tehillim, that it was song. And so it was supposed to be said out loud. And there is a sense of fervor with the other pieces. But the paradigmatic prayer, which is the Shmona Esrei, that based on this pasuk, Chazal understand, is supposed to be silent. But Eliyahu says, listen, call out, yell out to them. Maybe they're busy. Ki siach o siag v'chi derech lo ulai yashen hu vayikatz. Maybe he's involved in something else. Maybe he's on the road. Some of the Meforshim say ki derech hu is not on the road, but he's maybe your God is in the washroom. He's doing the normal needs. Maybe he's sleeping. Wake him up. Vayikru b'kol gadol, and so they did call out loudly. They took what he said seriously. This, again, proof that this is something that they would accept, this concept of the god being too busy to pay attention, and you got to catch his attention. Vayit go the two kamishpatam, and they began cutting themselves, as was their way. The charavot of ramachim, with knives and with spears, ad shvoch dam aleim, until they were bleeding, until they were pouring with blood. Vayehi, you remember, by the way, in the Torah, one of the things we have a prohibition against, lo titko de dualamet. We're not allowed to cut ourselves over, in a sense of mourning. We have taken it a step further, which Chazal also learned from that, of lo tasu agudot, that we're not allowed to divide. That the Jewish people have to have a sense of unity. But lo titgodedu in the classic sense is this, that people would self-mutilate. They would go ahead and they would draw blood to show seriousness. Vayihi ka'avor atzoraim. Now it's in the afternoon now. So the whole morning they were trying, nothing happened. Noontime, they're really upping their ante. They turned up the volume. Now it's at the end of the afternoon. They're already at their point of the mincha time, late afternoon. Now, vayit nab'u means that they prophesied, but they didn't prophesy, obviously. Okay, they made themselves, says Mitzudat Zion, like Nevi'im. In other words, they behaved as if they were trying to enter into this prophetic trance, but it wasn't real. And that's why Rashi says they just looked like a bunch of idiots. Ve'ein kol, ve'ein oneh, ve'ein kashav, that there's no sounds, there's no answer, there's no one paying any attention to any of this. Vayomer Eliyahu l'chol ha'am. And so Eliyahu tells all the people there, Yeshu elai, come closer to me. Vayigshu chol ha'am elav. And everyone went close to him. Now, why is he asking him to come close? Actually, the Mitzudot says to show that there's not going to be any trickery. This lahavdil is very much like, a magician, rolling up his sleeves or having someone come close for this close table magic they do. Watch, come really close and see what's going on. Vayirapet mizbach Hashem heharus. And what he does is he fixes, he heals the broken mizbeach of Hashem. Now, what is the broken mizbeach of Hashem? There's a couple of possibilities. One possibility is, if you remember in the beginning of the day, Eliyahu said, you do your stuff, I'm going to do my stuff. Each of them, shechted the animal. Each of them was going to prepare everything. He had, according to the Medrash, there had been an altar ready. And the Nevi'ei Baal destroyed it. That's the Malbim. However, there's another possibility, that this may have been an altar from the time when those kinds of private altars, the bamot, were still permitted. And it could have been that this, in the intervening years, had fallen into disrepair. But there was something there that had once been a Mizbeach Hashem up there on Har Carmel. Now remember, on mountains is where they would build their bamot. Vayikach Eliyahu 12 avanim. And Eliyahu takes 12 stones. Now, obviously, 12 stones are the 12 Shvatim. Kemispar Shivtei Bnei Yaakov, like the Shvatim are, Asher Hayad Dvar Hashem Elav Lemo Yisrael Yeshmech, about whom God had said, your name will be Yisrael. Yisrael Yeshmecha, this is recalling that scene when Yaakov Avinu battles with the Malach and succeeds. This is the name of royalty of the Jewish people. And so we're taking the 12 stones. It's interesting, 12, because the northern kingdom wasn't 12, it was 10. And Eliyahu may be with the 12 stones, according to the Radak, he's saying, I need the Zchut HaShvatim, but Eliyahu may also be talking about the fact that this northern kingdom is illegitimate in a sense. It's missing. You need all of Klal Yisrael to be successful in the sense. Vayivneh ha'avanim mizbeach b'shem Hashem, and he built this mizbeach up, in other words, he repairs it with those stones. Vayaz ta'ala kevetz atayim, okay, and he satayim zera, and then he builds a channel around the mizbeach. It's in essence what he's building is a boundary. It's the size of Beit Atayim. Beit Atayim is 100 amot by 50 amot. It's the amount that you would be able to plant 2 sa'ah of grain in it. Beit Atayim, the depository of 2 sa'ah. Sa'atayim is like, is double. Now, what's the significance of 100 by 50 amot? Which would mean, by the way, 100 amot, let's say that's about, at the minimal, it's 180 feet by, it's 118 inches. It's 180 feet by 70, well, help me, by 80 feet. That was the size of the courtyard of the Mishkan. In essence, he's demarcating around the Mizbeach like the area that was demarcated when there was a Mishkan around it. This is the area where something special is going to happen. Saviv la Mizbeach. Vayaroch et haitzim. He puts out the wood. V'yanatach et hapar, and he cuts up now the animal. Vayasam al haitzim, and he puts the pieces of the animal on top of the wood. Vayomer milu arba'a kadimayim, and he says, now fill up 4 jugs of water. Vayitzku al ha'olav al haitzim, and pour it over the sacrifice and pour it over the wood. Vayomer shenu vayishnu, and he said, now do it again. Vayomer shaleshu vayishaleshu, and they now said, do it a 3rd time. There's a major issue that comes up here that when you read it, you kind of miss one piece. They're in the middle of a drought. Where is this water coming from? So there must have been water, if you remember from the Carmel, either in the area of the Carmel or the Nachal below. There must have been some water there. Or Eliyahu was taking it one step further and using the rarest of their resources in the process of doing this to show his confidence that he's going to bring the matar. And the mayim went out, the water went out all around the mizbeach, and the channel that he had dug, the 50 by 100 channel, was also now filled with water. And now it was the time of the mincha. Vayigash Eliyahu Hanavi Vayomar, and Eliyahu Hanavi comes forward and he says, Hashem Elokei Avraham Yitzchak Yisrael, God of my forefathers, again, not Yaakov Yisrael. Hayom Yivada, now it will be known, Ki Ata Elokim Yisrael, that you are the God. Vani Avdecha, and I'm your servant. Bidvarecha Asiti et kol hadvarim haele, and I'm doing all of these things according to your command. Now Rashi takes this immediately as saying this whole thing, even though we don't find God commanding Eliyahu to do this, and you may think, which is the opinion of some of the Meforshim. In fact, the Gemara takes this in Masech Megillah, that it was called Hora'at Shah, was a momentary requirement that Eliyahu chose to do. Remember, Eliyahu is a Hora'at Shah, who, according to the Medrash, he was Pinchas. Pinchas killed Cosby and Zimri back in the desert of Horat Sha'ah. Okay, Kanaim Pogimbo. All of those things are happening with unique moments in history where something special had happened. But here it says, according to Rashi, God told him what to do. Aneni Hashem Aneni. Answer me, God. Answer me, God. Okay, why twice? Take my prayer with, according to the Targum Yonatan, Kabel tzloti Hashem b'ashata, bring me the fire, Kabel tzloti Hashem b'mitra, and bring me the rain. Vayidu ha'am hazeh, ki ata Hashem ha'elokim, you are Hashem the God, v'ata sibot et libam achoranit, and you're the one who has turned their hearts around. Now, one thing we need to recognize, compare the Nevi'ei Baal to Eliyahu. Nevi'ei Baal are 450 men. They're dancing up and down. They're jumping. They're yelling. They're screaming. They're cutting themselves and nothing. Eliyahu Hanavi, what does he say? 2 sentences. And ultimately, Aneni Hashem Aneni. It is a very simple comment that he's making at this point. It is low-key prayer versus all of their histrionics in their attempt at prayer. And it's conscious that he's making this decision. Part of the question, though, that still remains is, what is Ve'ata Sibota et Libam Achoranit? You have turned their heart around. Rashi says, God, I want you to answer me, and I want you to bring rain, because this is your fault to begin with. You, as the Gemara in Brachot said, he accused God. He said, you gave them their successes despite they're worshiping idols. And these last 3 years has been their punishment, but you, God, have to bear some responsibility for all of this. The Mitzudat David says no. While it sounds like it's a past tense, you turned their hearts in the past, it's actually avar b'makom atid. Remember, in biblical Hebrew, we really don't have past future tenses. What we have is perfect and imperfect. Perfect means it's happened. Now, we normally call perfect past tense, but sometimes that perfect tense will talk about something that will happen as a definite will happen. In this case, according to Mitzvot, what Eliyahu is saying is, you will turn their hearts without question back. You'll help them do tshuva. And that is one of the two ways of looking at it. Uriel Simon, by the way, is the one who points out the difference in the type of prayers of these two, of Eliyahu versus the Nevi'im. Vatipol eish Hashem, and a fire comes down, vatochal et ha'olah v'et eitzim, and it consumes the wood, the sacrifice and the wood, v'et ha'avanim v'et ha'afar, and it even consumes the stones and the dirt. This was not regular fire. This was the divine fire that consumed everything. And it licked up, dried up all of the water. And all of the people fell down on the ground. Notice, the first time the people didn't say anything. The second time they said, good plan. Now they're moving and actively bowing down to God. These words we put into Yom Kippur. The culmination of Yom Kippur, Hashem Hu Elokim, is from here. This is the moment of absolute recognition. What we're saying is at the end of Yom Kippur, we recognize HaKadosh Baruch Hu just like these people recognize HaKadosh Baruch Hu after seeing the miracle. But not just that. We say we're doing tshuva like they did tshuva. They were people who were poseach al shnei asipim, who were worshiping idols and God. Now they have come to accept God fully. We walked into Yom Kippur with sin. We have done tshuva, and now we are just like them. Vayomer Eliyahu lahem. Now Eliyahu says something that is definitely in our society the reason they tear down one of his statues. Vayomer Eliyahu lahem. Tifsu et nevi'ei habal ish al yamalet mehem. Grab each one of these 450 prophets. Don't let them go. Vayitpasum. And they captured them. Vayoridem Eliyahu el Nachal Kishon, and he brought them down to Nachal Kishon. It is one of the rivers that flows into the Mediterranean, there at the bottom of the Carmel. Vayishchatem Sham, and he slaughtered them there. Now, whether he slaughtered them is Eliyahu killed personally 450 people or others killed, we don't know. There's basis to say both of those. For example, we talk about Shlomo HaMelech or Moshe Rabbeinu building the Beit HaMikdash or the Mishkan. They didn't do it by themselves. They get the credit for it. But here, again, Uriel Simon has a piece. He says the only reason why this strikes us as cruel is because we're using our modern sensibilities and not the sensibilities of this time period. Our modern sensibility says, no, you don't kill people like that. The sensibilities of those times were you're a prophet for an idol, you're a pagan priest, you get the death penalty. And so you need to be careful about those kinds of things. And again, going back to statues, Vahamei V'Yavin. Vayomer Eliyahu la'achav. Now Eliyahu now turns to Achav. And he says, Alei echol u'shtei. Now you can eat, now you can drink. Ki kol hamon hageshem, because there's the sound of the rain coming. A very big question. Where was Achav? In this entire showdown on Har Carmel, he's not there. We don't hear about him at all. Where is he? Not just that, when it says alei echol ushte, go up, eat and drink, is he down in Nachal Kishon where the slaughter took place? Or is this just a euphemism to go? Go up, get up and do it, like we'll say it in English. Just get up and do something. Okay, it doesn't always mean you have to stand up at that point. Someone could be standing at that moment. And the third question is, what's the significance of eating and drinking? So to take one step at a time, apparently Achav was there. Whether he was down at Nachal Kishon or he was on Har Carmel, we're not sure. We don't know for sure if he went to where the slaughter was. The one piece of supporting evidence is if we take the word alei literally, go up. Well, Nachal Kishon is down, and go up would be to the Carmel, or go up could be back to Shomron, where his capital city was also on a mountain. It could be literal, and if it's literal, he went down to the slaughter. But he was at Har Carmel. So why isn't he mentioned? That's the nature of Tanakh. You know, if you think about it for a moment, Tanakh doesn't give us all the picture of the historical events. Tanakh gives us the picture of the events with the personages who are significant to know. We find this in one of the best cases is after Yitzchak gets married, Avram disappears from the scene. It sounds like he dies, but he doesn't die for many years. And in fact, Avram had knew his two grandsons, knew Yaakov and knew Esav. So why doesn't the Chumash say that, you know, he held them on his lap? And the answer is because Avram at that point is no longer a personality for history. His historical role, his significant role in Jewish history ends, and the rest of his life is insignificant. For that purpose, he was a significant person. I don't want you to say that he was an insignificant person, Chas v'shalom, but for this purpose of the Tanakh, he wasn't adding more to the story. He had done his role. The same thing could be lahavda with Achav. As evil as he was, he's up on the mountain. Now he's up on the mountain. We're going to see at the end of the parak, actually, that things may have been good, and I have to speed it up a little bit. I apologize because we're going to run out of time. But Achav was there. In terms of why he's eating and drinking, there's a medrash which says that he was fasting because the day when you need rain, you fast. It could be the equivalent of saying, Achav, it's all taken care of. Go and enjoy yourself. It could also be that. And so he goes up to eat, and Vav good again. And while he's going up to eat, Eliyahu is going to pray. Now, how does he pray? First, he bows down entirely on tefillah. And then Vayasam Panav Ben Birkav, he takes the position, which is a very uncomfortable position, of his head between his knees, still waiting for God to answer. Vayomer el Na'aro, and he tells to his servant, the Medrash says this is Elisha, Alena abeit derech yam, go look out towards the west and check, see if the rain's coming. Vayal vayabeit, and he looks out and he checks. Vayomer ein mumad, I don't see anything. Vayomer shuv sheva pamim, and 7 times he makes him go back and forth to see what's going on. Part of the words of Musar on this is never give up on God. Keep on going, back and forth. Even Eliyahu knew for sure it was going to happen. He made him go back and forth. Vayhi b'shvit, and it's the 7th time. Vayomer hinei av ketana kekaf ish olam mayim. Yeah, I'm sorry. There's a small cloud, like the hand of a person coming up, okay, from the sea. Vayomer alei amor lachav asor v'reid v'lo ya'atzarcha hageshem. So go tell Achav, who apparently had been waiting still, even though he told him to go. He had been waiting. Go get off of Har Carmel before the rain comes, because then you won't be able to get off. The rain is going to start pouring down, and you better get moving. And in the meantime, the skies filled with clouds and with winds. Vayigeshem gadol, was a great rain. Vayirkav Achav vayelach Yisraela. So Achav is on his way going back to the capital city in Israel. Vayad Hashem Eliyahu. And at that moment, an amazing thing happens. The hand of God. Rashi says, Ruach Gvura. Eliyahu had this extraordinary strength. He went ahead and he had the strength, girded his loins, and he's running before the chariot of Achav, until he gets to Israel, 25 miles. He's running at the same pace as the king's chariot. What's it all about? Says Rav Hirsch, this is a sign of honor that's being given to the king, which is also something we find much earlier in the Rikra, the Marikra. He says to give kavod to the king. Uriel Simon adds on one more piece. What he's saying is, in this case, this wasn't against you, Achav. This was against what was happening. Achav at this moment is the king. Eliyahu is recognizing the king, and he's giving him the honor that a king would deserve of having someone go before him. If you remember, we had the same kind of scenario when we had the almost first civil war after or near the death of near the death of David HaMelech, okay, where we go ahead and we start building up chariots, and we have people who are going to be the escorts to the king. And in the same case, here Achav, who we always imagine is wicked, in this story has one moment where he refers to Eliyahu as the Ocher Yisrael, as the one who's causing trouble. Besides that moment, Achav is passive. Achav does what he is asked to do. Achav exits this. Notice, Achav is not killed here. Okay, Achav at this moment has the ability to be a great king. He has Ovadia as his minister. All of that could be. He goes back to Shomron, and next week we'll pick up the story, same time, same place. Just a couple of quick announcements that this week, the Daytime Dialogues, which are now also a podcast, I'll have Rabbi Jacob J. Schachter. J.J. Schachter is my guest. He's great. Hopefully I'll be able to keep up with him. But the other piece also, Rabbi Myers' class this week will not meet because it's Tisha B'Av night, and my drasha is going to be at 9:45 after Tisha B'Av to give everyone a chance to eat. Everyone should have a very good day, and it was a pleasure meeting with you again and seeing most of you through the year. Bye-bye.